How can we get the industry back on track? What starter steps need to take place?
I think for me, I think that's you and me. This is the discussion we're having. What we need a consumer revolt. Do you know anybody who's lost their Yahoo account data? You know what? I probably not if you don't know anybody who still uses a Yahoo Mail, but Gmail is just the same. Facebook has lost your data 20 times, and it's publicized. It's made, now Facebook, X, Instagram, they have breaches daily. Okay, so if you're saying where do you start to affect real change? It starts in the grassroots. It starts with you. It starts with me. It starts like conversations like this. Aren't you sick of this? Haven't you had enough? It's like I I I I, I draw a comparison to in my lifetime during the 70s and 80s. There was a guy who fought tirelessly for safety in automobiles, Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader was a tireless advocate for safety because you know why? We were driving cars and you get in accidents at 20 miles an hour and people would be going through the windshield because we didn't even have safe seat belts
Mhm.
because Detroit didn't want to spend another dollar and a half, $2 to put in a canvas belt with a metal clasp to save people's lives. Why? There was no money in it.
Mhm.
Okay, and it took a consumer revolt to say we're tired of all of this, these needless deaths and these serious injuries happening in cars that could be prohibited. And flash forward 30 years later, we have airbags, we have shatterproof glass, we have not just seat belts but whole harnesses. I mean, the advances that we've made in the structural integrity of cars alone for safety purposes are all changed. Now, we did this. There was no money to be made by Detroit to sell a safe car. Nobody cared about that until people started losing loved ones in minor accidents, and you got a consumer revolt. So where I'm going with this is what we need clearly is to start when people are losing our data to start speaking up and say that's unacceptable. Amazon's you use Amazon, they've lost your data. They've
Mhm.
lost it many, many, many times, but that seems okay with you because you've never said anything to it and you've signed their terms and conditions. So, maybe just maybe if you want to affect real change, start asking for it, start expecting it, and then start demanding it. No, this is unacceptable. You have lost my data. What are you going to do to compensate me? At a minimum. And for me, that's odd because, as Americans, we're a very litigious society. We take people to court for dropping coffee in our laps, but not for losing our DNA data. Why is
Mhm.
that?
So then, what is the worst case scenario regarding this data loss, data privacy, fiasco?
In what sense? The worst case, for me, the worst case is is going to be determined by the sensitivity of the data that I lost. Okay, and I'm making a case that businesses that we interact with are not protecting it. Certainly, the governments and communities are not protecting it in accordance with its level of sensitivity, its level of privacy that we feel, because we're not defining the level of privacy that we expect for our medical records versus our maybe the history that you've been had allergies versus your actual DNA yeah, would be different to you and I. But at the end of the day, it would still have this. It could still have the same impact on our lives. So until we understand the impact, we're not going to understand the immediacy of the problem. I think you only need to look around to see the evidence and that's in the amount of breaches, the amount of data we've lost, continue to lose every single day,
Mhm.
and the ineffectiveness of us as a society to a prioritize that and b solve that problem. I'm starting to get as I get old, I start to say, then let's make it a law. Let's make it a law that a business has to protect that information. Here's a better idea. When somebody sells your data, why don't you get a piece of that, like a royalty, like a
Mhm.
commission on a recording that you've just made? If
Mhm.
somebody sells your medical history, that's your history. It belongs to nobody else in the world. That's yours. You have a right to make a profit out of that. Why aren't we
Right.
looking and exploring ways to say, okay, we want to share data. Let's make sure everybody makes a little money on that, and
Mhm.
especially me as the data subject, the owner of that data.
Is this a realistic ask? Like, if we banded together? Would
Yeah,
this
there
could
you
this
go.
actually be an
It's
outcome?
only realistic if consumers started to think, wait a minute, I want more. Wait a minute, this is not good enough. You know, it's funny that you and I, we buy a flat screen TV and it doesn't work. We take it back in a heartbeat. But if we subscribe to an internet service provider and we get ransom malware, we get Trojan horses and denial of service stuff from our internet provider who sends that stuff down to the pipe and puts it into our home and our businesses, why don't we pick up the phone and call them and say, I want my money back? I got a virus using your service.
Mhm.
Why do I do, that's unacceptable. You delivered that internet connection to me. That internet connection was full of viruses and Trojans and malware. It's had an impact on my home or my business. I want my money back. That's where it starts, is a consumer focus on quality of service, certainly from, social media platform providers, but from the infrastructure that provides us the internet
Mhm.
is, an internet, sorry to get off on another tangent, but an
Go
internet
for it.
service provider sees all that crap that you and I get, from hackers and, the spyware, the malware, because they're delivering it to our back doors. They get it. But here's the key is they make money on that because they make money on bandwidth. And as you're downloading a piece of spyware, that's taking up bandwidth and they're making money. They're charging you for that luxury. It doesn't make sense to me. If people actually looked at it, they'd starting to ask for security from businesses and from internet service providers, from managed service providers, from the people who gave us the laptops and the cell phones. In my generation, I saw BlackBerry come and go, where BlackBerry was about a secure mobile. Why aren't we asking for secure mobile applications? And understanding what in fact is, what that constitutes. Everybody understanding Apple nobody but Apple sees that information. No, Apple and everybody they sell it to sees that information.
So
um,
encrypted is a joke. It's a non thing.
I don't want to say it's a joke. Encrypted on your personal device, things that you have identified are certainly. It is no joke. It is once again, it's one of those minimum things like encrypting traffic to and from. If you have personal device that you're storing long term on your mobile or your laptop or tablet, absolutely encrypting it. But I would not get. I'd look for an open source encryption tool,
Sure.
something, and not a pay for encryption tool like an RSA pay for it. Because if RSA loses that encryption code because somebody hacked into RSA, then you've just lost what you think is a secure little folder where all your secrets are held.